Welcome back to the SportsMax Zone. Jamaica will host the 49th CARIFTA Games next year, set for the Easter weekend of April 16th to 18th. The announcement was made last Saturday by President of the Jamaica Athletics Administrative Association, the J3As, Garth Gale, at a special Congress of the North American, Central American and Caribbean Athletic Association, NACAC. Jamaica was a late replacement after the original hosts, Guyana, indicated an inability to stage the event. Gale says the Games will be a welcome addition to the schedule of events being staged to mark the 60th anniversary of Jamaica's independence from Britain. Next year's event will be the first staging of the CARIFTA Games since COVID-19 was declared a pandemic in March of last year. Our track and field expert Leighton Levy joins us to discuss this story. Leighton, COVID is still with us. Why is Jamaica in a position to do what Bermuda and Guyana couldn't do in staging this event?
Well, it comes down to experience, Lance. When you look at what happened, of course, with the cancellation of the CARIFTA Games this year in Bermuda, it was done largely because of spikes in Bermuda during the time when they were supposed to host the games. If you remember, those games were delayed from March to July 2nd, from July 2nd to 4th, and then from August 13th to 15th. Clearly, the situation had come to a point where they were unable to contain the virus in a way that would make it safe for their people as well as the athletes coming in. Now, what Jamaica has done since that time is that it has hosted a number of Olympic Destiny meets. Of course, it has hosted champs, which is similar to the CARIFTA Games in terms of the numbers of athletes. And, of course, national championships is June earlier this year. So you're looking at a situation where Jamaica now has the experience knowing what to do, what not to do, what protocols to put in place to ensure the safety of all involved. So it's actually a very prudent move on behalf of NACAC to ensure, of course, and Garth Gale as president of J3As, to get the games back into Jamaica, the first since 2011.
Yeah, I recall, though, that the Bermuda Athletics Association and their president at the time, Donna Rayner, had not been so comfortable with the cancellation of the games, and I think they were in favour of staging the games, but they were overpowered, of course, by the government, the government's administration and the government's posture at the time of COVID. The same thing with the Jamaica situation, because Garth Gale and the J3As could not have signed off on this event until the Jamaica government gave them the green light.
Absolutely, and of course, if you remember, the Bermudan government were rigid in their position about people coming into Bermuda without being vaccinated, and of course the different restrictions that they refused to be flexible about, which then eventually cost them the games. Of course, Miss Minister Grange always quick to jump on an opportunity like this. Of course, understanding and seeing what was done last year with champs. Well, not last year, last season with the national championships as well. And of course, a series of meets, not just the Olympic Destiny meets, but there were meets running through the NDP stage meets that for earlier this year, before the lockdown, I think it was in May. You're looking at a situation where there's a lot of experience, a lot of understanding here about what to do. And of course, the minister, given those strict protocols that Jamaica had in place, now has seen for herself that it is possible for Jamaica to host the games based on what we've seen in the immediate past.
Isn't it possible, though, Leighton, that there could be a vaccine mandate attached to the CARIFTA Games by the time it comes around? If of course, we're drawing the example from the schoolboy football season, which is set to kick off this week in Jamaica, there is a vaccine mandate in place. Clearly, if you're bringing youngsters from disparate parts of the region to compete here, and even though it's next year, but COVID could still persist in the way next year as it is affecting us now, isn't it conceivable that that could be in place and could put a spanner in the works?
Not really. I think what we've seen in the last 6 to 8 months, George, is that remember, Jamaica has the lowest vaccination rates among Caribbean nations. So you would believe that most of the athletes coming into Jamaica, and of course officials, would have already been vaccinated or close to being vaccinated by the time the next Easter rolls around for the CARIFTA Games. So I think even if mandates are put in place for the safety of those here in Jamaica and safety for the athletes coming in, you would have to believe that by that time, by next year, we're talking about the next 5 months, most of the athletes, if not all of them, and the officials coming, coaches, etc., will have already been vaccinated. So I don't think, even though those mandates might be in place, I don't think they prevent much of an obstruction in terms of having the games happen here.
Yeah, there's a question I want to ask, but I'm toying with it because I don't want it to seem as if there's any bias against any particular nation. But as a journalist working, would you be less or more confident going to a CARIFTA Games set for next year, 2022, the Easter weekend, in Jamaica, as opposed to any of the other two nations in the mix for these games? I'm talking Bermuda and Guyana.
Yeah, because Jamaica has the experience, George. One of the things that Jamaica does have, especially when it comes to track and field, is a vast amount of experience knowing how to handle these situations. You look at the fact that even in the height of the pandemic last year, the MVP meets, the name of which is escaping right now, were held, and not a single athlete or official tested positive during those times. And notwithstanding, they don't rival the numbers of athletes coming in from the Caribbean. You have to consider that there are hundreds of athletes and coaches and officials who were part of those meets, and nobody tested positive. There were no reports of anybody being infected. There were no reports of any breakout within any camp. There were no reports of anything involved with the spread of the virus during that time. So, armed with that knowledge and that experience, Jamaica was best suited to host these games because we've done it before on multiple occasions. And I think had it not been the case, I don't think the government would have pulled and would have given the green light to it for it to happen here.
Yeah, and just last point on this, Lance, before you continue with Leighton, just to make it clear, it is true that we have the lowest vaccination rate in the Caribbean, but we could always ask people to say, well, point us to another Caribbean nation where over 1 million people have been vaccinated, and they'd be hard-pressed to do so. Well, they couldn't, because population size means that per capita, Jamaica would be behind, but in terms of raw numbers, 1 million, nobody else can match that. So there we go. All right, Lance?
Yeah. All right, we're still with Leighton and still with athletics. Jamaica's double Olympic 100 and 200-meter champion, Elaine Thompson-Hira, has been named the NACAC Female Athlete of the Year 2021. The right winner, Leighton?
Yeah, but not by much. When you look at what happened at the Olympics with the likes of Jasmine Camacho Quinn from Puerto Rico, I think Moo from the United States, Sydney McLaughlin from the United States, when you look at what they did during the course of the season leading up to the Olympics, of course, I remember I think Moo 2 gold medals, of course an American record, the first American to win an 800-meter gold medal in the 800 meters since 1968. Jasmine Camacho Quinn, first Puerto Rican woman ever to win a gold medal at the Olympics, unbeaten during the course of the season, and 12.26 a national record. And of course, Sydney McLaughlin, 2 world records in the 400 meters, first woman to break 52 seconds. All had very strong claims. Where I think the difference was, why Elaine got the nod, is that all 3 other ladies shut their seasons down right at the Olympics. Elaine went on and did some magnificent things after the Olympics. 10.54, 10.64, 10.65, winning the Diamond League title. Sydney McLaughlin, Jasmine, and of course, I think we're at the United States celebrating their medals. So I think when you look at the raw data of what was accomplished during the Olympics, before the Olympics, during the Olympics, and afterwards, Elaine certainly gets the nod because she went on to do spectacular things. 10.54, the second fastest time in history, in the minds of many, including myself. The real world record for the 100 meters, 21.53. The first one to run under 10.7 4 times, winning the Diamond League title with 10.65, her 4th time under 10.7 this season. You have to consider that those performances after the Olympics give her the edge.
Yeah, you mentioned Moo and Camacho. At the top of the show, I was suggesting that McLaughlin would have been the closest to Elaine Thompson-Hira for this award. Would you agree with that?
It's hard to say because I think running unbeaten in the hurdles all season, Jasmine Camacho Quinn, that's extraordinary. You know the hurdles are a minefield, and so
yes.
Anything can happen. And for her to go through the season unbeaten, running the 3 fastest times in the world this year, and that one of the fastest times in history, I think 12.26 is the 5th fastest in history. Don't quote me on that, I think, but it's somewhere in there. Her record has been extraordinary. The thing is, she won 1 gold medal at the Olympics. Sydney won gold, well, 2 because she won the 4x4 as well. But Elaine won 3 gold medals in Tokyo. But those 2 would have been in the, had Elaine shut her season down after Tokyo, I think those 2 would have been right there with her in terms of the nod for the knockout field athlete of the year.
And Leighton, you know, you mentioned the amount of things that Elaine did after the Olympics. I also want to stress the point that she got the award because of the time frame. We have to remember that she won the 100 meter in record time. And then 4 days after, she was looking fresh again and competing in the 200 meters and, of course, a double-double. So, you know, to think that you use words like get the nod and whatnot, I felt as if she was an outright winner.
Yes, and also the fact that, okay, you raise a very good point, Maria. And of course, the fact is as well that she runs the more popular events, the 100 and the 200. You know, the 100 meters is always the blue ribbon event. And if you remember, after the Olympics, during the Olympics and after the Olympics, there were 2 things that people associated with track and field were talking about. Carsten Vargum's 45.94 and Elaine Thompson's 10.61. And of course, the 21.53, which is also the second fastest time in history. Those were the 2 buzz events. And of course, Elaine brought the buzz to an even higher level after the Olympics as well. So, yes, for me, for a purist like myself and others, it was a close battle, I believe. But I think her accomplishments after the Olympics, given what she did, of course, she did create history by being the first double-double in Olympic history as well. So that would have been in her favor as well. But what she did after Tokyo, was extraordinary.
So then, Leighton, are you in opposition to the press release that NACAC issued because they called it, you know, the greatest run of excellence of all time? Elaine?
You know, it all depends on how you look at it. For me, it's pretty close. You know my feelings about Flojo's records. So what I think, and if you talk to the purists and the pundits out there, the people who really study the sport, they will tell you that for them, 10.54 and 21.53 are the real world records. So, you know, it is what it is. Elaine was just outstanding. And it could be argued that it probably is one of the greatest seasons, if not the greatest season of all time.
You know, I've been sitting here trying not to force myself into arguing with you because, to be fair, you are not disputing the selection. You know, I just can't be comfortable hearing you say the nod and the edges, Mariah said. But at the end of the day, there's no reason to have a beef with you, my friend, because you're not saying that the choice wasn't right. And as I said to Lance at the top of the show, nobody remembers the man or woman who invented the first pair of shoes. But we know who did penicillin. We know who gave us the light bulb. We know who gave us the telephone. Elaine Thompson-Herah's performances were being tweeted about by persons in pop culture, Cardi B, movie stars, people who've never watched a 100-meter sprint before were talking about it. It was a word that we used a lot in the Olympics coverage at Leighton. It was transcendental. And yes, Wu and company get their respects for what they did. Absolutely remarkable. But the sport of track and field will only grow if persons other than the pundits and the purists have an interest. And everybody else were agog and jaw-dropped looking at what Elaine Thompson-Herah did. And it was cool to align yourself with it because it was something that the world spoke about for days. So I rest my case. You didn't do anything wrong, my friend. You didn't do anything wrong.
You make a very good point. And what I'm saying is that you remember I said earlier that the 2 things that people were talking about after the Olympics, during the Olympics and after the Olympics, is Vargum's 45.9 and Elaine's 10.61. And then Elaine came and then pushed the envelope even further for 10.54. And you're right, she transcended for the first time since perhaps Usain Bolt. American media, the British media, global media, we're talking about Elaine Thompson. You remember, you know, when the argument came up about her leaving MVP, her interview was done on an American network. She was the point of discussion, the subject of discussion on American networks right across the spectrum. So, you know, yes, obviously her performances were transcendental, as you mentioned. But in terms of the actual pure performances, the others were close.
Yeah.
Look.
That's why I gave you the opportunity. I saw you fuming.
Yeah, but no, well, I don't want to nitpick and trouble it because again, Leighton is saying nothing wrong. But I'm just saying, if Elaine Thompson had gone to bed after that 4x100 meters run,
she should have won.
And she would still have won. NACAC would still have given her the award, and she would have been deserving. But There you go.
All right, we're still talking about another special Jamaican woman. The respected British online publication Athletics Weekly has shortlisted Jamaica's Olympic relay gold medalist, Brianna Williams, for their Junior Female Athlete of the Year award. Now, Leighton, Brianna, only 19 years old, got her feet wet at the Olympic level in Tokyo, and a very, very bright prospect. A tough field that she's up against here for this award, but she is shortlisted.
Yeah, she is shortlisted, and it's recognition of the work that she did this year, because when you look at her season, 1097 makes her the fastest under 20 woman in the world this year. Of course, adding an Olympic medal to that, in a national record of 41.02, the third fastest time in history, puts her in the conversation. But that's about it. I mean, she's done well, but when you consider a 19-year-old Wu and an 18-year-old Mboma, it's going to be hard for her to get the nod over those two ladies. And of course, the other finalists as well were European under 20 and world under 20 champions. But if I could rank them, I think my vote would go to Brianna for third overall, given that what she did at the Olympics would have been a gold medal, which the other three contenders didn't do. Mboma won silver. I think Mu won 2 gold, 800 meters, which is the first American to win since 1968, and of course a 4x4 gold medal as well. But the recognition is what is important for what has been a very solid season for the young woman.
Yeah, and the fact is that she is in really good company, Leighton. We can't escape that fact, because Shelly-Ann Fraser-Price is 34, Elaine Thompson-Hero is 29, Sherika Jackson is there as well, younger than the two I just mentioned, but she hasn't turned 20 yet, and she is rubbing shoulders with some big guns that are likely to propel her and inspire her to even greater heights than she had in 2021.
Absolutely, and of course, now that she's healthy, one again, I had a chat with her yesterday evening. Her hamstrings, which were bugging her for most of the last half of last season, are now healthy again.
Yes.
She's poised to do significant things, because if you remember now, her entire history as a track and field athlete has been filled with records. I think she is the youngest Jamaican ever to win a gold medal at the Olympic Games. She's at 16. She won the world under 20 sprint double title. In Tampere, Finland in 2018. She's a world record holder for 15-year-olds in 100 meters. CARIFTA, 2-time Austin City Award winner at the CARIFTA Games. She has done it all. She's done everything at the highest level, at every level that she's at so far. And her career is just beginning, because she's, as you mentioned, she just turned 19 in March. So you're looking at 20, she has her whole career ahead of her to continue to do great things. And of course, there are people who are expecting her to run like 10.6 next year or some ridiculous thing like that. But in time, I believe that she'll be one of the greatest sprinters Jamaica will ever produce. Yeah,
Leighton, as usual, always great talking to you on the SportsMax Zone there in your Liverpool shirt. When you talk to Jurgen Klopp, tell him the SportsMax Zone says hi.
I will, and of course I'll tell him to buy a central midfielder as well, because it's killing us.
Okay, Leighton, talk to you again soon.
It is a joy, but I know it's relative, because I know George is suffering with Manchester United.
You can buy friends.
It's okay. The segment is finished, Leighton. The segment is finished. Goodbye.
You keep doing that, Lance.
You can buy a friend.
Every time we attack Manchester United on the show, Lance is breaking.
No, but it's the end of the segment. Didn't you hear the producer say?
No problem. We go to break, Lance.
We have some horse racing coming up as well, so we have to rush to that. Back in a moment.